Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. I'm Devin Bedoni.
And I'm Uriel Eisen.
And today we are going to go over some improvements, get a little more in depth on kind of what we worked on this last week.
And why.
You
Yeah. Want to kick it off?
Yeah, we don't have a quote. We used both of our quotes for last episode.
Oh, man. Here, I have a quote.
You do? Oh, man. Magic.
It's from Elon Musk, which I hesitate to quote, but it's a good quote.
Let's hear it.
The best part is no part. So that was a good quote.
Interesting.
It suggests that, I feel this way about, file management. And in fact, actually, if you look behind you, there's a stack of 20 bins, which as I was buying them, I'm like, should I get rid of the stuff that is going in these bins, or do I need it? Am I just refining a thing that should be eliminated? And I'm sure the answer is both yes and no, right? So what I'm excited about is for things to have a place.
Yeah.
And I think that may lead to getting rid of more stuff when it's oh, now that this is all in one bin, we have 5 of them, right? Or something like that. But for one of the big ones is prototyping. I just have a stack of random bits of webbing and 3D printed parts. And I just want a bin for each project for each. And other things like maintenance kits.
Yeah.
Just stuff. But it is worth bearing in mind. Also, I think when you're getting into ERPs and you're getting into software solutions and data management and collecting data, doing QC, if you can eliminate it, that is always better than refining it. Assuming it's not needed. But often I think we forget.
We just won't measure anything.
Yeah. But I think often people forget to think, can we just skip it?
Yeah.
Right. It's can we refine it is maybe question 2.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Interesting.
So there's a quote for the week.
Yeah. And when it comes to product design, lowering part count is always great.
Always great.
Yeah. Critical, you might say, actually. So I finally, after much thought and discussion, sat down to write the SOP for our job setups.
Oh, very cool.
Did not take very long. Should have just done it. But
that's, I feel all the good improvements. You're how did I wait this long? Yeah.
And I think, I think it will be helpful for the employees. I think it was maybe even more helpful for me.
To make it explicit, or what? Which part?
Yeah, for me to just kind of think through it and be what are all the actual critical tasks that need to happen before we say this is good to go.
That makes sense.
And put them in one place, in combination with the new webcams at the workstation computers. That was a big part. It's just take pictures of your setups
instead of writing 1,000 words.
I still sort of have to write the words for the setup to happen. But for things that we're going to do again and need to come back to.
But I feel you ran into a bunch of issues that are fixed by just a photo, right? When you said 0 point and it was actually the 5th axis rock lock. Or it's you look at the photo. Oh, I see.
Yeah. So somehow just putting in this SOP, take photos before you put the little green thingy on the machine that says good to go.
Oh, cool.
That's kind of the trigger is do all these things, check this list.
Very nice.
Before you put the green thing on the machine.
And the green thing on the machine is a little ring around the start button.
Yeah. That indicates to everybody that the job is set up and good to run.
And so can I ask, how are you thinking, how do you interact with it? Is this something you printed out and laminated and it's stuck to the machine? Is it something
No, I have
on your desktop?
It's in our ERP.
Okay.
So we have an SOPs tab.
Okay.
In our ERP. Our ERP is loosely, well, not loosely specifically, but there's a bunch of stuff in there that we kind of don't look at on a daily basis. And there's 3 tabs that we kind of look at on a daily basis, which is a jobs, which has kind of basic informations of a group of parts usually, unless a job is just one part. So we don't actually use that one a lot. and then job processes, which is where all of the kind of important information lives. And then I have added this SOPs tab.
Okay.
And it's one thing I really like about Airtable is it allows you to like filter and sort lists in very effective ways. And it keeps you from kind of having to, like, in the past, I've been fond of classic file structures.
Yep.
The issue with file structures is if you go down the wrong path,
yes,
it's very hard to back out and figure out where the correct path to go is. And it can be easy to put things in multiple places or in the wrong path by accident, just based on what you're thinking at that time. So having in Airtable allows you to sort by a lot of different variables or sort and group. And so it's really nice to just kind of have this flat list and things are broken out. And if you don't see it, you can just like kind of, is it not in machining tasks? Is it in admin tasks for some reason?
Interesting.
And it's also very easy to resort instead of having to like go in and find something and copy or cut and like move it to another folder. You can just change a drop down and it'll move to the one that you want it to be in or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's find it very easy to modify and adjust. And
I think there's also pieces of information that are useful. And you see this with file structures. This is sort of where they fall apart is they're useful to more than one process. And in a file structure, you sort of have to have two copies, or I think you can create an alias or something that points back to the original.
Yeah.
But instead of just having it apply to more than one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Relational databases are
cool.
Quite cool.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for it. There's a few things where it really falls flat on its face. One thing, as I've mentioned, I've been talking with a friend about building out a new system for us that's a little more streamlined and stripped down. And one like real big issue that from the research he's done, there's no way to get around it, is that all of the scheduling aspects of Airtable, so like Gantt charts and things like that, they don't go down to the like hours and minutes level. They're purely by days. So if you're trying to schedule things that take less than a day, it just doesn't work. That's really
wild. I don't know enough about Airtable. I can't imagine how that would be true, but I'm sure
it's odd.
Maybe it's like the native tools don't do it, but and so you'd have to get like super custom.
There's like plugins that will allow you to do it, but then you
don't like plugins.
Yeah, not a fan.
I'm on Shopify. And they have a big marketplace for plugins. And I think the upside of plugins is it sort of enables a level of flexibility and customization. And the fact that they're building APIs means that people can build these plugins that are fairly powerful, but then they don't play well together, or you pick the wrong one from the get-go and invest hours and hours and then discover it's missing one key feature. Right. I don't know. It's not.
Yeah. We have a handful of plugins for like different views in Airtable, and we found that we just don't end up using them.
Interesting.
They look like, when I kind of got demoed on the system, like they looked sexy. I was like, oh, cool. Right. It's like have all the stuff in the right place, like very easy to interact with. And then we found like just like the straight list, like spreadsheet style is where we always find ourselves.
That's funny.
And we're like, I guess there's a reason that data gets organized this way.
Interesting.
For people.
Yeah. So I guess I'm curious, like with your SOP, I'm curious to hear maybe next week or in the coming weeks, just how you stay on top of using it.
I'm not anticipating that we're going to use it daily. I'm anticipating it's going to
will it become?
I think it's going to be
an OP,
a reference document.
Okay.
Something that we're going to kind of like focus on integrating over the next couple of weeks. And then once it's sort of standard practice, it can be there as a reminder.
Right. That makes sense.
And maybe that will need to be like a little checklist or note at the machine that says, did you follow setup SOP? Because right now and especially like this last week when things were, the schedule was weird. I was, really focused on something else. So the employees were kind of on their own. And things felt a little bit rushed and kind of just out of the ordinary. I think it was hard to remember to do stuff like that. So I think
Nice.
that's still part of the ongoing process, is how is we're going to integrate and keep this happening.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been playing a lot with like point and calls and levels of SOPs. Like, do you write it in excruciating detail, which means no one is actually going to use it as a checklist?
Yeah.
It's more an instructional document. Anyway, it's a funny line to draw or walk. As I'm saying that, I'm thinking a relational database might be a really nice way to organize that, because you sort of have like one task, which is document your setups, or even just setups, and then you have a number of documents that are associated with that, right? So you'd have like the point and call at the machine, and then you might have a more in-depth checklist, and then you might have a fully fleshed out document of exactly how to do it, and they use the webcam and you click this button in this app to get that, and then
Yeah, as you're saying that, it kind of is a little bit intriguing on, as we build out a new system, how if we could like integrate sort of a generic or like a standard setup into each or a standard SOP into each setup to be referenced,
right?
And you just kind of change the details for that particular job or particular part, but it reference. Yeah. Anyway, that's a cool thing to think about.
I have a really, really small one here, but a lot of them are small. So this was basically when we cut our webbing. We are still using a hot knife, which is a different conversation, but the cord kept sort of like slowly dropping down behind the desk, kind of, so that to use it you sort of have to pull it out to get enough slack to then use it. And it's funny because I feel like that's been happening for probably the last 6 months, and at the beginning it's an annoyance, but you're in a hurry. Someone implemented a small fix that improved it but didn't solve the problem, because it used to like dangle down on the floor, and then sometimes you'd sort of trip over it and pull the hot knife off the desk. Yeah, it wasn't really it
doesn't go until you pull the trigger.
Yeah, it wasn't really like hot. It was more just a critical piece of infrastructure that was hurtling at the ground. So that improvement has been there, for maybe 3 months, and then so we finally fixed it so that you don't have to pull the cord to get slack every time you want to go use it, or nearly every time.
Yeah.
And the more broad piece here is I've found, I think it's easy. Like, I think what was happening is that action of pulling out the slack in the cord, to get slack in the cord, it sort of became habitual and just how you used that tool, such that it didn't really register as a problem anymore. It was just like, to use this thing, you pull the cord, you pull your hand back till you have enough slack in the cord, and then you go use it. So it's interesting. It's hard to continue to see waste as you build sort of like muscle memory and just like habit of like, this is how we do it. And it's easy to forget to step back and reanalyze.
I'm having this memory of this business I was kind of helping with at one point, helping with a piece of equipment. And I'd always be like, well, if we do this, you could change this whole workflow in the space and it'd be so much better. I remember the person I was working with being like, but then we'd have to move that table. And I was like, it's a folding table.
Ready? You get that and I'll get this.
I was like, just move the table.
That's like, funny.
This is like a multi-1,000-pound piece of equipment. It's challenging to move. If we move that table, we can just like, the things can just continue to run off the end. We get, all the next processes. Yeah. Instead, there was this like, spot where like someone had to pick them up and then like cross. They had to like cover all these cords.
Oh, geez.
It was like everybody had to go through this pinch point where you're picking these things up and moving them to another spot. And I was just like,
we can fix this.
I threw up my hands and left.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like an attitude problem, but beyond the attitude problem, I suspect if you came into our shop, you'd see a bunch of things like that too. And it's just like, it's hard to keep seeing.
I mean, it's an attitude problem, but it is just like getting used to the status and like,
it's like, that's how we do it.
Some people I think actually start to take comfort in like the fact that they know all of the weird ways to do a thing.
Yes, it starts to feel like almost like a point of pride. It feels like expertise.
Yeah.
And you're just getting good at a really silly thing.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. No, I think that's true.
I'm amazing at taping this rubber band in this special way.
Yeah. If you do it just with this half twist, you're really, yeah. Yeah.
Lordy.
Yeah. And even stuff like, we're not putting a table there because this cabinet, it's not, there's not enough space because of this cabinet. And then it's like, well, what's in the cabinet?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nothing, cleaning supplies. It could go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just hard to keep analyzing.
Yeah. As I've considered a new space, moving to a new space.
Yeah.
It is a little overwhelming feeling like I feel like I've learned a lot about how I would like a layout to be, but it's very it's a little bit amorphous in the sense that I've never been able to like place it in a space. And then as soon as I look at an actual space and start to place it, I'm like, okay, this will go here. Oh no, but then that'll be in the, oh no. And it's I think it is just a big challenge.
What's going to happen? You're going to move into a much bigger space. You're going to end up arranging things exactly the same way. And then just have like random bits on the perimeter.
Or just like an ocean of space that we just like look at.
And you're like, oh man, yeah, it's too complicated. Yeah. I have another one. So we're having an issue with, turns out we shipped some product with webbing that was cut at a different angle on the end. Not an angle I like. It was just a little more blunt than we like to do. But I never communicated that.
But did the customer notice and complain?
No, I noticed and complained.
Gotcha.
It wasn't faulty. Like, it's going to function. It just didn't look great. And I think it would be a little bit harder to feed through the buckle initially. And so we added a template at the station so you can compare the part you're cutting to a template that is sort of holding a standard, like a 0, and then an example product. So anyone can sort of pick it up and look at it and say, does this look like that?
Can't you just put the knife on like an arm so it's set?
Yes. Again, us cutting webbing with a hot knife is a whole conversation. Okay. Yeah, we do. We cut perpendicular, like a flat end, and then we cut an angle end
Mm.
alternating. So it needs to be able to switch, but that is something mechanically achievable for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to do it, and then you're like, man, that's a project. And so we're still using the knife. So I thought it would be cool to do like a pneumatic piston vertically with the hot knife on it, or a soldering iron or something hot. And then at the top, like there's the pneumatic pistons that have the rod that goes all the way through. So I thought you could have sort of a two
stop
stops.
And spin
so
it
spins. Yeah.
And
then just like a foot pedal or something. And then if you get your finger in there, burn.
Well, you could skip the piston and just have like a spring-loaded arm that's like preset.
Oh, true. And
So
then
that
just have a pedal that you're pulling down.
Pedal for power, and then you use your hand to push it so that it's sort of OSHA.
Right.
Like, I guess you could still theoretically put the pedal.
I mean, I could also
stick your
shield
hand
it.
into it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, hand lever would work. I could even put the switch right on the lever. But, then that's building a custom machine, which it's not a complicated machine by any means. But
So
do I work on that, or do I work on the belt?
So what is the standard way of doing? Like, what would the industry standard way of doing this be?
Depends what industry, but there are automatic machines where you just tell it what to cut and it does it. Most of the ones that are off the shelf that are not very expensive, like $2,000 to $3,000 instead of like $10,000, do one angle. You set the angle that they cut, and then you just run a bunch of them. The other thing is, like a lot of machines out there, they are optimized for batch production.
Yeah.
So you sort of dial in the length, dial in your parameters, and then you say, cut me 50, cut me 100. I'd love one that has at least like memory buttons, right? So you could sort of say, cut 18 inches or 36 or like our standard lengths. We may just end up building our own, which honestly would be a nice, because it's a pretty simple machine. It would be a nice place to start building the knowledge internally of like how to build custom machines, because we have a lot of like little things that I feel like we'd be better off building because they do what we need much better.
Yeah. As I was thinking through that too, I think having something that rotated to stops would be inferior to just having two. One that's preset at one angle and then one right next to it that's preset at the next angle. And you just like
That's an interesting thought.
Pull one, cut, and then pull it through to the next one and then cut.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, especially in light of the fact that we're trying to offer more webbing colors. Or in the near term, it probably won't happen, but just managing our current color offerings in two different widths, it ends up being a lot of rolls of webbing. And so we will probably, the current thought is to have a rack and then have sort of like a shuttle that moves to the color and width you want along the front of the rack to do the cutting. And so in that case, you could have...
And the shuttle has the knife on it.
Probably. Yeah.
That would be cool.
So then you could have two of them right next to each other and just move it 2 inches this way or 2 inches that way, right? To do your two ends.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking of them in line.
Oh, in line is a much better plan. Yep.
Keep thinking about that. It does seem like you could almost make that from off the shelf stuff of like, what would it be? Like we were talking about like a boom mic holder or something. Like there's like, I feel like there's probably some like off the shelf spring loaded parallelogram type deal.
Yeah. I mean, in thinking about just doubling them up, which is, I don't know why that never occurred to me, but it's a good idea. I could probably just buy two webbing, like manual webbing cutters and mount them in sequence next to each other.
Is that a thing?
Yeah. You pull a lever and it cuts the webbing.
With hot?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, do that.
They're kind of enormous, but I'm sure I could find a small one. Anyway.
Interesting. Oh, like, yeah. I'm thinking about maybe this is different, but like when you go buy bulk climbing rope at REI or something and they cut it right there.
Yeah, similar to that, but
interesting. Small little thing. We finally got the signal light up on the lathe.
Okay.
We had them on the mills. The lathe was a little bit more of like a confusing install.
Okay.
But it actually went pretty quick. So that's great. So
nice.
Now all the machines have signal lights, and so far it's great. Again, it was kind of a weird week to start with that because we weren't doing a lot of production work. But I actually, now that I say that, it was actually very helpful because I was doing this kind of prototype-y tooling work. I was running parts on the lathe and a mill at the same time and doing assembly.
Oh.
And because I didn't have any extra parts for, because someone may have cut some stock incorrectly for one of them, I was definitely like not pushing any limits on the machining side. So some of the cycles were kind of long.
Yeah.
And running things on operator stops so I could check and stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
And so if I was like over at the other machine, being able to look and just see that it was still on cycle, and then as soon as it finished, run over and go to the next thing was actually interesting. It's actually incredibly helpful. Now that I'm remembering back, I used it a lot. So that was pretty cool. So I would suggest to anybody, I don't know, I'd always like looked at that option when purchasing machines and been like,
who needs that?
Why? And now I'm like, it will never live without one again. Pretty sure. We also started using Lightburn officially.
Okay.
So we had like
Lightburn is your laser cutter program?
Laser engraver software. Right. Maybe you can use it for cutting. I'm not really sure. Again, I haven't really touched it, but
that's good.
Yeah. Uriel kind of got into the weeds with it this last week a little bit. And so I think it's easier to use, does better file import. And the unknown or unanticipated bonus is that it actually runs the laser differently, apparently. And so it's faster.
Wow.
The cycle times are lower.
Interesting. Yeah. That's very nice.
Which is cool because sometimes they add up, or they did add up.
Huh.
I've always seen these videos of it happening super, super fast.
Right.
And with EasyCAD, Ariel had done a lot of experimentation to try and get cycle times down while still maintaining quality. And for whatever reason, it was just like always slower. And, I'd see some video online that's like, 25 seconds. And then ours would take like a minute or two or three.
Wow.
So that's really cool.
Huh.
I don't know why.
I'm very curious if you do ask Ariel what the difference is. I'd be curious to know.
Yeah. I'm not sure. It seems like there's a lot of different
path planning, or
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
It is cool.
And what finally pushed you into getting a new software was
file import issues.
Okay.
So we'd get a file from a customer, what they wanted to have engraved.
Mm-hmm.
We'd bring it into EasyCAD and it would just be this mess.
Oh God.
Like something you'd look at and just be like, how did that happen? Like lines just like extended to some weird, like, what's that called? When you do like
vanishing point?
Yeah. Like some weird vanishing point. Or maybe they drew it into or whatever during the import export process.
Yeah.
Like all of these linked chains became unlinked somewhere. And so the software wouldn't recognize it as like a closed loop.
Right.
So,
that sounds.
It was a pain. Yeah. It's not good. It was a lot of wasted time on something that is mostly a loss leader for us anyway. This is not great.
That doesn't sound ideal. So let's see. Yeah, so we hired a while ago at this point, a couple months, and it has been hugely impactful to just R&D efforts. Like we're now producing many iterations of a couple products we're working on, which, saying that out loud, single piece flow. Maybe we should be doing one at a time. I don't know how to balance that because I feel like sometimes things just kind of need to marinate in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I'll be like, oh, here's a good option for that.
Yeah. That's how I feel about improvements that I make sometimes in the shop.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe there's an underlying reason for that, or maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so we have a lot of sort of R&D hours in more things that are unreleased is the net effect.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bad side. Mm-hmm. On the plus side, there are just now, like, that was such a key hire and should have happened sooner.
Mm.
Just to grow the business, really. I mean, basically I was at a point where like it was me and two part-time people, one of which is very part-time. Mm-hmm. And so there were just like enough orders and enough demand all the time where every day was basically a production day. And then I'd try to squeeze in mm-hmm. R&D sort of after hours. And that was just like,
it's not sustainable.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No. And then like squeezing in sales around that also is like, anyway. So it's funny. It sort of felt like a slow month. And then I was looking at the numbers and this is our best quarter yet. So,
that's a great feeling.
Yeah. Which is of course like best quarter in terms of revenue. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's best in terms of profitability because like bringing on a second,
sure.
payroll is
probably not.
Yeah. But I definitely see the potential there because now we're not production limited. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have new products coming out and we're really keeping up with production and have a lot more capacity, so it's definitely like, it was getting to a point where it was like, I was spinning my wheels real hard.
Yeah. It seems like you guys are doing a lot of process improvements as well. So that's a lot. That's like pushing the peanut forward on many fronts simultaneously.
Pushing the peanut. Yeah. I've never heard that.
Oh yeah.
I don't know where that comes from.
I don't know, but you can imagine.
Yeah. No.
Pushing the peanut.
It is a nice alliteration.
As we were discussing last episode, like, in small businesses, it does seem like labor is one of like maybe the limiting factor.
Yeah.
For most people. So took a long time to come around to that myself.
Yeah. I mean, it's nerve wracking and it's I was sort of talking about this with Sam. Like going from one person to two people is such a big, I mean, that's 100% change in sort of hours that you need to somehow plan for. And like, it's a big shift.
Yeah.
Like going from 2 to 3 is, half that shift.
Yeah.
And so on. So it's like, it's a big hurdle to clear.
Yeah.
And I would definitely say, like, I've talked to some people who are like, is it time to hire? Is it not time to hire? There is another option, which we did for a long time. And I really think it was good for us, which is sort of just finding people who are happy to be part-time or are happy to sort of do flex hours. It is really hard, I think, often to do that with really like specialized processes. Like for what I'm doing, there's a lot of sort of pretty basic stuff.
Yeah.
And I think breaking that stuff off of your business first can kind of give you time without needing someone who needs, 3 months of training before they're actually useful.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Totally. Interesting. So you and I both run these Brother CNC mills, and one of their limiting factors, it's widely agreed, is long tools, running long tools because of the rigidity in the tool holder interface. And so that's kind of been an ongoing challenge for me, is to figure out how to do bigger parts effectively.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of parts right now that are all in the 4-inch tall range.
Okay.
Which is pretty long for these machines.
Yeah.
Pretty long tools. Let's see. They're not all 4 inches tall, but they are all coming out of 4-inch stock. Most of them are around 3.5 inches tall. And so I got this new tool. I've been trying to figure out, really, I have ways that I can finish parts like that, like do the finishing passes pretty effectively.
Okay.
But roughing has always been a challenge. And so I got this new tool that's this is getting into very machine-y geekness, but it's a 1/2-inch diameter. It has a 5/8 inch length of cut, and then a reduced neck down to 3 3/8.
Nice.
So you effectively have 3 3/8 length before you start rubbing the shank on the wall, but you're only cutting with a 5/8 inch length of cut. So the actual
and you have a lot of carbide there
you have a lot of carbide
rigidity
to keep it rigid. Yeah. In fact, we were doing a part this last week where we went down 2 inches with a 2-inch length of cut standard tool.
Okay.
And then we finished off the last portion with this other tool.
And is it just roughing?
This was actually finishing. So I got a finishing and a roughing version.
Oh, cool.
And I was finding that there was actually more deflection in that 2-inch tool than the long one. There was like a little step because the long one was undercutting the 2-inch length of cut. I mean, it had a lot, the 2-inch length of cut tool has 2 inches of flute engaged in the cut. So
right.
There's a lot more force there. But I combined the rougher with a stubby Mari tool side lock holder.
Okay.
And the overall gauge length is not too crazy. So I'm pretty excited. Well, I mean, we're about to actually start putting it to real use today, hopefully.
Okay.
We've used it, but not in anger. And now we have a lot of parts to make that are going to require this over the next couple of weeks. So we'll see how it holds up. But pretty excited about this as a
nice
improvement for those tall parts that are otherwise quite challenging.
Right. And as a fun little tidbit, so Alexander Slocum is like a precision machine designer at MIT. He helped design the ruling engine number 3, I think they're at, which is like the most precise things. Well,
is that the thing that was in that video that everybody's talking about?
No,
that's a CMM.
That's a CMM. This makes diffraction gratings, which a lot of scientists are sort of like, it's the most useful tool science has, like the most fundamental technology. Anyway, and the goal with diffraction gratings is making the largest one possible, but building
largest physical size possible.
Yes, and it's basically scribing a bunch of linear lines in aluminized glass. And it's like 30,000 to 70,000 lines per inch. And deviation and parallelness a few millionths of an inch.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it starts to change your results.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're very precise machines. But in terms of the stubby tool holders, so rigidity increases with diameter to the third power, I believe. And so larger diameter, obviously, you get a lot more rigidity.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, rotational inertia increases to the fifth power, according to him. And so on these machines, to do fast tool changes, you need to fully decelerate the spindle before doing the tool change. And
they make these with a spinning tool.
Oh, no. Sorry. For our machines, in terms of design constraints, right? Like you could say, what's the advantage of 30 taper? Why wouldn't you just get a bigger tool holder? Because then you can't stop the spindle as fast.
Mm-hmm. Which these machines stop very fast.
Ridiculously fast. Yeah. Nice. So another improvement we've been working on, morning meeting templates, to sort of have a standardized morning meeting. And the need for that, a few things. One, a lot of people who sort of successfully implement lean and build a lean culture, when asked sort of what the most important step to take is the morning meeting. So taking that to heart, the couple things we've really started to notice. One is making improvements starts to be, it's hard to stay abreast of all the improvements happening. And so it will be nice to just be on the same page about stuff. The other is having a place to log production issues from the previous day without interrupting everyone's day, to sort of all talk about them. This happened, why did that happen? Is it something we're going to follow up on? Are we going to, anyway, so a spot for that without sort of stopping the day and saying like,
I might have to steal your template.
Yeah, no, please. And then the other is, staying abreast of the improvements, and then having, let's see, what else were we noticing there? That's kind of it. Yeah, between the recommendation and just being able to, the last piece was a lot of conversations happen about different topics, and then there's often no follow-up on them. And I feel like right now we're just using this sort of natural filter. Like you can generate a million ideas for things to improve around the shop, right? But then deciding which ones actually happen right now is not an explicit process. It's just sort of like which ones happen are the ones that happen, and the rest sort of get dropped. And there's sort of a maybe a feeling that like the really good ideas will rise to the top and the rest. Right. I just feel like there could be a better approach to deciding which ones to do and which ones to spend time on. And I think right now, there's this idea of like things are either urgent or important. There's like a 2x2 matrix of urgent and important. And so there's things that are urgent and important, which get done. There's things that are urgent and not important, which sometimes get done. And then there's things that are not urgent. Anyway, right. And it's the non-urgent but important things that often get pushed. Even though, and the non-important and urgent things, it's hard to stop and say like, that's not going to happen, unfortunately. Anyway, so I think it'll make it a little bit harder to begin with, because I think it's going to add a lot of noise, because people are going to start adding all sorts of stuff to morning meeting templates, and then we're going to have to build the skill of focusing on which things we want to bring.
They're going to add it to the template, or they're going to throw it into the soup in the meeting?
I think add it to the soup in the meeting. Yeah. There will be a place that starts capturing too much information, I suspect. And then we'll have to come up with ways of deciding which things get talked about. But I think that process will be overall helpful.
Maybe you make a rubric like that. When they bring it up, you say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10 for urgency, where is this in your process? On a scale of 1 to 10 for importance, where do you put this? So I think we're also going to start rating, I forget if I talked about this, rating ideas for improvements, or rating issues that we've flagged as how much, what's the cost of fixing them? And that's money and time. And what is the benefit? Like how impactful will this be? What's the impact? And then you try to pick ones that are low cost, high impact. Still sort of talking through how to do that exactly, but Interesting. Very interesting. We got our Freddy in.
Oh yeah.
On Friday.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's cool. And I see why people get bigger ones.
A Freddy is a big vacuum cleaner to filter the coolant and chips coming out of the back of the CNCs.
Yeah. And the more, as I was using it, I was like, oh, it's just a vacuum cleaner.
Right.
You don't have to think about it as being strictly for coolant.
Yeah.
Which I sort of have.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I can see why a bigger one would be nice. Right now we're pumping out from the machine, and then when it fills, pumping that back into a garbage can so we can get everything out. Do all like the full vacuum out of the sump. Any other?
Gotcha.
Like, it was really helpful, honestly, just for like, you know how it just kind of gets to be a mess around the chip pan. Just like vacuuming all that up was pretty nice.
Nice.
And it got the inside pretty clean. The inside of the sump, the coolant tank, pretty clean. Cool.
Here's a thought.
Yeah.
To solve your garbage, it doesn't solve your garbage pail problem, but you could maybe do. Well, I'm thinking about the layout of your shop. Anyway, I'll mention it. Is you pull one load out, put it in a garbage can, and then you go to the next machine. Or maybe you do 2 garbage cans, but then you filter from the second machine into this first machine.
Oh.
It would be fewer transfers. But that would only apply to your 2 mills that are right next to each other, I think.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of rolling around. And it's pretty tight back there, just moving your body around.
Probably not a good idea.
I like the concept. It's worth thinking about. So Quorum did a machine clean out, and then I did one because I just kind of wanted to see what it was like and experience it. And it's definitely like significantly faster than doing it any other way.
Okay.
Having said that, it was still like a chunk of time, and it's a time when the machine can't be running.
Right.
So I don't think we're going to do it like definitely not daily, and I'm not going to do every machine every week. I think we are going to do 1 machine per week so that we're on a rotating schedule.
Nice.
We did 2 last week. I think they're going to do 2 today to kind of like just get us up this morning before I get there, just to kind of like get us all on a footing.
Okay.
On an even footing. But yeah, I think that'll be kind of the schedule we'll work on and see how it goes. It came with 2 filter bags.
Okay.
One that I think is like a 200 micron and one that's a 20 micron.
Yeah.
So we have the clear Blaser coolant. Even running through the 20 microns, some of the like super fines didn't get caught. It was interesting pumping it back in and still seeing this kind of like haze.
Interesting.
Not a haze.
Okay.
It's like if you stirred silt.
And you want to get that out?
I'd like to. Yeah. I'm not sure if it's possible. I guess
I'm sure it's possible. It's just that as you go to finer and finer sizes, it gets
I think it
harder
would be
and harder to do.
One thing we discussed was pumping out with the loose filter, because that's where all the chips get caught, and then swapping to the fine filter when you pump back in.
So it goes through the filter when you pump back in?
Well, you have to suck it back out of the garbage can.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha.
So no, it doesn't normally when you just like
that's
pump
a good
out
idea.
and then pump in.
Yeah.
But if we pump out into a garbage can and then we suck it back into the machine and pump it into the vacuum, and then
you could also look at getting a big bag filter for the garbage can, and then when you dump it in, that would only be gravity feed, which may be your limiting factor. The thing is, surface area is sort of the name of the game.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good thought.
I know, unfortunately, quite a bit about silt loading filters.
Oh, right. From your water filter
it's
days.
A mess. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, I've experienced plenty of that in the mountains as well.
Yeah. Right. Nice. I'm wondering if your R450 will get loaded substantially faster because the spindle uptime is...
It does. Yeah, that's the first machine we cleaned out.
Interesting. So your weekly schedule might be, you'll either be overdoing the S machines or underdoing the...
Yeah, that's true. And also the lathe, because it has a chip conveyor, doesn't seem to be as bad. Also the type of chips that lathes make
I'm feeling like fines are probably less of an issue, or do you get fines still?
There's some, but they are much less of an issue.
Hmm.
I mean, ideally, if you like are running your lathe perfectly and
Right.
pushing it hard enough, it makes pretty small chips. Or
But they're small, but also
broken up chips.
Right.
But they're not the same shape.
They're not, and they're not really fines, right? They're sort of just small, but nice and chunky.
Yeah.
Like 200, they're not smaller than 200 microns, I would think, but maybe they are.
I think if you're doing like a fine finishing pass and it's just taken off like this little skim.
Gotcha.
It can be pretty
interesting.
Fine. Yeah.
So another big one is just for us has been over the past week, really trying to organize the shop and just clear out the, get back into those corners. And I mean, our shop, as you know, is just not that organized. Like the cells are sort of organized, the specific locations, but in between that, there's a lot of mess and disorder. And so I think, just trying to really get things a little just cleaner, neater, 3S'ing or 5S'ing or just S'ing. I don't know. Doing some cleaning. And it's been good.
I'm going to start with one S.
Sweep.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then the last one we have is a little bit boring. It's about the podcast itself, but we mentioned we redid the template to make accessing the data and inputting the data just a little faster.
Mm-hmm.
Since breaking up the podcast into 2 episodes in the week, there was a question about where to put the
show notes. Because for those of you who haven't figured it out, we record both episodes in one go.
Yeah, one sitting. And so we just had a conversation about if we put the show notes in one, so we have one template for each week, and then if the show notes are sort of above their respective sections, you do more scrolling and they're sort of hard to find. And so we ended up putting them right up at the top. So that was a little improvement, was both adding, just making that modification to our template so that it sort of gets propagated across each new episode. And I feel like that improvement has been good. And then the last was getting a pop filter for your mic. Mm-hmm. And hopefully this episode is pop free. And so that's about it.
Yeah. Thanks for everybody for listening. One thing I forgot to mention was thanks to everybody who reached out about the probing issue I was having. Sounds like there is ways to do what I want to do now, not straight posted out of Cam, I believe, without a little bit of editing, at least for our machines. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing to work on as soon as I can make some time.
For sure.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for the feedback.
Yep. You can find us on Instagram at incrementalci. Please follow and then share improvements you're making and tag us. And check out the stories is mostly where that's at. We actually have highlighted a lot of the improvements. So if you go to our profile and click highlights, you can sort of see a lot of the improvements other people are making, mm-hmm. which is kind of fun. You can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram.
You can find me at Lycan_MFG.
And till next week.
All right. See ya.